Some of the world's finest economic and financial minds have been in Australia this week for a conference on systemic risk, financial stability and regulation. Among them was New York University's Nobel laureate, Professor Robert Engel, a specialist in market volatility and systemic risk. I caught up with Professor Engel at the conference and asked him whether a small economy like Greece still represented a significant global systemic threat.
I think one of the ways we should think about systemic risk is that if the financial institutions are vulnerable, then any kind of a shock can lead to a systemic event. It's a little bit like there's gasoline, and then there's a spark, and this makes the whole thing blow up. So Greece is not a big event, but if the financial institutions of Europe and the Western economy are in a weak position, then a small shock like Greece could have big effects.
Well, are you inspired by the way the Europeans have handled this problem?
This has not been handled at all well by the Europeans. I think that there is a giant hole in the ground, which is the debt in Greece. And there's a question of who's going to fill this hole. Is it going to be the Greek workers? Is it going to be the bondholders in Europe? Is it going to be the ECB and the sovereign governments like Germany and France? And I think that there is no consensus on this, and there is a negotiation that's going to go all the way down to the wire to figure out who is going to actually fill this hole.
But this is a hole Greece can't possibly dig its way out of.
That's correct. They can't. So I think it's unrealistic for parts of Europe to say, let them, they made the problem, let them fix it. I don't think that's not going to happen. And if that's the attitude that prevails to the end, I think it will be a miscalculation and it will be a collapse of the Eurozone. If Greece leaves the European Union, there will be several other countries that will leave at the same time. And I think that this will end up being bad for the wealthier countries, that countries like Germany and to some extent France will find that their exchange rate will go skyrocketing when there are only strong countries left in the euro, and their exports will then be expensive in the world market, so that their prosperity will be substantially reduced by any collapse like this of the Eurozone. There should be a fund, big fund, set up in Europe to help the peripheral countries who have financial crisis, and I think there should be closer governance between the countries of Europe so that in the future these sorts of problems are dealt with as they come, as opposed to waiting till it gets to be a crisis.
And the United States, some say the US is actually in a worse position than Greece by some measures.
I don't think it's in a worse position, but the U.S. has got a big deficit at the moment, and it's hard to remember, but just 10 years ago we were paying off our debt. We were running a surplus, and what happened in between? We ran this war in the Middle East, and we didn't raise taxes to pay for it. We built up this big deficit, and then the financial crisis came, and we had no reserves to bail out our economy. So we're at a point where it's become politically impossible to have any more stimulus expense in the U.S. So we're pretty much forced to wait it out. And I think it could be a long wait.
Does the US have time on its side? Will voters allow the government to wait it out?
Yeah, that's the problem. I think the population is not happy that this recession is not over yet. But I think that we need to train more of the population to be economists so they could understand the situation a little better.
So what is it that's preventing another round of stimulus?
Well, the political debate between Republicans and Democrats has become very polarized on the question of whether our spending during the crisis was outrageous, and there is a view It's a relatively extreme view, but I think the view that it was actually all this government spending during the stimulus, during the crisis, that made the crisis as bad as it is. Whereas I think most economists would say that what kept the crisis from being worse than it was. But in any case, there's a political view that we shouldn't repeat any of this. And I think one piece of evidence in favor of that view is that it takes such a long time for any stimulus to get transmitted to the market. It might be if you started today, it wouldn't actually be available until after the economy had recovered.
Do you worry about the implications of this for America's place in the world?
You know, the world is changing. It's changing in what I think are wonderful ways. I mean, countries which were in poverty 20 years ago are blooming. You look at China and India and Brazil and really many other countries that are benefiting too. They're doing very well. So the U.S. is becoming a smaller part of the world economy. I kind of think it's a good thing.
Well, Professor Engel, on that optimistic note, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.